investing in the next generation of generators, incomparable air compressors, or accessible accessories like lighting and truck-mounted equipment, we're helping customers customize solutions for their toughest demands. That's the power behind Doosan Portable Power, a name that symbolizes a comprehensive commitment to do more for customers and the understanding that to become a leader, you have to lead the way to the future.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to the Ventures Onsite webinar today, where we take a closer look at the GCC market. We're going to take a deep dive into the construction activity throughout the entire GCC region. My name's Phil Higgins and I'll be your host today. And we thank you so much for joining us. Today, we will present an overview of the construction market throughout the GCC region with insights to the construction award and construction spend of 2020, and try to understand a little bit more about what's expected in 2021 for both construction award and spend. Our aim is to bring an overview of the current market situation so that we can understand what is expected this year and the years beyond. The pandemic of 2020 has, as you will see, pushed the market very low. We saw a significant reduction to the amount of construction award in 2020, and this will have an effect on the industry moving forward for the next year or two, maybe longer. It's an unfortunate situation that we've had to deal with in this last 12 months, and it's caused us to change the way that we approach our business. And it's important for us all to understand what's truly going on so that we can read the market. I'd like to thank our sponsor today, Doosan Power. Whatever job you have, Doosan Portable Power has the solution to fit your needs, from industry-leading air compressors, generators, and light towers to their unrivaled customer service and support. Doosan Portable Power are part of the Doosan Group, and they are a reliable supplier of equipment that lasts for a very long time. So if you are looking to upgrade your portable power equipment, please give our friends there at Doosan Power a call. Well, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our panelists today to help us understand specifically what's going on in the mind of the developer today. We've seen significant reduction to the market activity in 2020, and in order for us to see stimulus to the market activity, we need developers that are moving forward with construction spend. That's both private and government entities. I'm sure we will start to see more infrastructure projects moving ahead, which we are already. Oil and gas projects are still progressing, but I'm sure many of you are very interested to understand what's happening in the building construction sector. And so let me take this opportunity to introduce Eva Juszczyk, one of the most difficult surnames I had ever had learned to pronounce. Eva, I'm not sure if you knew, but when I first met you, I had no idea how to pronounce your name. So I did a search on YouTube and I found a football player, a famous professional football player in the US, and his name was Juszczyk. You know, just to learn your name, I had to listen to half a football game just to find the commentator when he announced this, Mr. Juszczyk. But welcome and thank you for joining us. Last time you were with us, you were with another company, and I understand that you have a new position today, so I look forward to hearing about that. I'd also like to introduce Mr. Paul Rao from Ecom, one of their leading technical people, very much involved in construction activity throughout the region, and look forward to hearing from you, Paul. So Eva, why don't you just take this opportunity to tell us a little bit more about UNA Architects?
Thank you so much for the introduction, and obviously we had several chats as well when you were practicing my last name. So it's not my family, although you never know, right? So thank you very much. I joined U+A a couple of months ago, Very proud and excited about new opportunities, and it's a very well-known, well-established brand on the market in the region. So U+A, with our two principals, Pedram and Martin, very well established architecture, interior, urban planning and landscaping. So we're mostly focusing on the design and delivery on site within the region, and as well looking out, expanding in different regions, Canada, UK, and other areas that we, KSA obviously as well, other areas that are developing currently. The office is people-centered. As you can see, a very nice, vibrant environment. Focus on the design. I would like to just present to you just a few projects that were completed just recently. And then looking at a different type of buildings. So 3D printed house. So we're looking into delivery of innovative solutions, whether it's a building printed or modular solutions. So this project was delivered just last year, and that's in the housing industry. Then we're looking at a midtown residential. Started in 2014, completed last year as well. So that's residential development, award-winning high-end residential. Then Marassi floating homes. So in hospitality, looking into sustainability and a different way of living and different solutions. And then as well, Swiss International School of Dubai, that was just completed as well recently in the past year, with a very big focus on sustainability. So I believe that will be a future, and we will be looking into those areas of focus at the later part of this discussion. Looking as well into the future, so some projects, just wanted to let you know, we're working on quite a few projects. Some of them are confidential. One of the large developments is Arabian Ranches master plan with focus on residential, but as well community centers, schools, mid-rise residential, as well as housing. And Park Ridge, Dubai Hills Estate. So those are some of the residential examples. We also work on hospitality projects recently, quite a lot of clients coming for the master plan hospitality office developments. Welcoming and thank you for the invite for this panel discussion. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Eva. Paul, explain to us a little bit about Ecom. What are they up to today? They have their fingers in all sorts of project management and project design activities. So tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with Ecom and what Ecom are doing throughout the region.
Okay, well, I think hopefully most people will have heard of Ecom in some sort of capacity. I mean, it's a very large global firm, both sort of engineering, design, and all aspects of consulting. Here in the GCC, we're across most parts of the GCC. We've been here in the Middle East for well over 60 years through our sort of legacy companies as well. Myself personally, I've been here since 2004, so a fairly good handle on the GCC and the Middle East as a whole. Our main bases in GCC are sort of Qatar, UAE, and Saudi Arabia. With sort of smaller offices in Bahrain and Oman and other areas. Some of our key projects in the UAE are the Expo Public Realm, which we're very sort of proud of being a part of, and look forward to that happening shortly, Expo 2020. Also Midfield Terminal for Abu Dhabi Airports was sort of one of our flagship projects, and also SeaWorld on Yas Island and Warner Brothers. So sort of a good mix of infrastructure, sort of leisure and public realm infrastructure type projects. In Qatar, we've been involved in sort of public works, involved in the Doha Expressway, the orbital highway, and other sort of the Qatar World Cup projects over there. And then in Saudi Arabia, we're involved in a number of large PMO type engagements with Saudi Customs, for example, and then also a lot of the PIF entities. So the likes of Red Sea, NEOM, Amala, those sorts of entities. We're doing a lot of work helping them in Saudi Arabia. So a good sort of mix of large projects and smaller ones, and some key clients throughout the GCC.
Thank you so much, Paul. Appreciate that update. We have a lot to talk about, and it's very exciting to see that Ecom are very much involved in some of the major projects in Saudi Arabia, some of those mega projects. The macro view of the GCC region, in accordance to the Ventures Onsite database that we have. Fortunately, we have been tracking construction project activity for many years, and we have the ability to not only give you an understanding as to the new projects that are moving ahead, but we also have the historical record of project activity that we can refer to. I want you to keep positively focused here, because there is hope. There is always hope. But for the contractor and the supplier to the construction industry, I don't want to paint a rosy picture today. When we interview people all the time, they talk very positively about the marketplace. I'm a little bit more of a realist. And so if we're not prepared for the future, we will not be prepared. Last year we saw a significant hit to world markets because of the COVID-19 pandemic. And this is something that we are still living through on a day-by-day basis. We saw a significant reduction to the GDP throughout the region, no matter what the activity was, especially in the Gulf region. One of the reasons for the lowering GDP in our region in this greater marketplace was because of the oil price reduction. And that is a mega driver for the GDP throughout this region. So some of the positive things that we expect to see in 2021, the GCC non-oil GDP growth is forecasted to be an increase of 3% in 2021. And this is on a decrease of 5.7% that we saw in 2020. KSA, Egypt, and high potential countries to take construction industry forward. We are seeing very strong market activity in Egypt, and we're not focusing on Egypt at this point in time, but we've included it simply because over the next 10 years, we will see a dramatic increase in the construction activity in Egypt. So KSA, UAE, Bahrain, and Egypt have reached an agreement with Qatar, and this will help restore the ties between the countries. New leadership in Oman and Kuwait, and this hopefully will inject some fresh impetus to the marketplace. Sadly, both Oman and Kuwait were hit quite poorly through the COVID-19 period. The oil price has seen some improvement from December 20 and has now reached $61 a barrel in February 21, and this is a relatively high number compared to where we had hit in 2020. KSA's Vision 30 initiatives are moving ahead. May not be as quick as we would expect, but first comes infrastructure and planning. And I do know that there is a lot of activity moving there. And I look forward to maybe some update from Paul specifically to this. More projects are expected to move forward with PPP, public-private partnership kind of arrangement. Last week, there was an announcement with Bahrain moving ahead with their Metro project. That's a project that's been on the board for some time, but they are moving ahead with this. And once again, using the PPP project structure to stimulate market activity. And as we know, metro installations in countries really do add to the development of construction market opportunity. Regional relationships are still improving, and other major developments with Iraq and opening up its borders to KSA after 30 years. This move is expected to see improved trade between KSA and Iraq. Some of the concerns for 2021, still that the coronavirus is with us and it has hit our economy. There is weak global trade because COVID-19 has affected many industries and all countries. There's rising unemployment. The US-Iran relationship is a little bit tender, and there is still regional instability. So it's a very tender moment for some of that stability that we talked about. The coronavirus and vaccine rollout, will this change the way that we address business? Some of the other concerns are simply how the Biden Middle East policies will take effect. Brexit is another concerning nature on things that happen today when a market is depressed and we start to see some movement in one particular country. There are consequences to that, and Brexit is one of those. And Dubai Expo 2021, well, we haven't actually changed the name, but we will be moving ahead with this, and there has not been any further notice to this yet, but we all hope that we see this come into play. Here is a graph just showing the status of the oil price throughout the years since 2010, and you can see that 2011 and 12 we saw a dramatic increase from a relatively low oil price, very close to the worldwide economic crisis times, remembering that was 2009, 10, and 11. The worldwide economic crisis did continue through very difficult times in that 2009 through to 2013 period, and it's only that in 2014 that we began to see a market recovery. And you can see there the oil price collapse in 2016, and then again in December, and we're already pushing up higher than 55 today. The value of contractor awards in US dollars for the entire region gives you an understanding as to how damaging 2020 was for us. And so we, according to our database, we keep a record of when a project is awarded, and we recognize the value of that contract. And because we track many of the projects of greater value than $1 million, we do get a very strong indication as to the market situation. So we recognize that in 2020, there was 73 billion US dollars of contractor awards in 2020. And this is down from 2019, which was expected as a low year of 130 billion. And in all regions in the GCC, we saw similar percentage reductions, except for Qatar. We'll talk about that when we see the slide. You can see here that the project awards in 2020 were less than 2010, which is the year following the worldwide economic crisis. Paul, you were here since 2004, and I think Eva, you were here back in the crisis times, and they were difficult times for us. But we worked through with a recovery strategy, and companies survived, and regions pushed forward with support of some of the construction activities that happened in Saudi Arabia at the time. Very significant that we want to talk about Saudi later today. So the oil price has a dramatic effect to the construction activity. When the price is high, we see markets increase. When the price is low, we see markets fall. And as you can see here, we saw a price increase to the oil in 2011, 12, 13, stimulating construction award in 2014, 15. Well, that's a construction award. We have to recognize that there are a timeline here, and 12 or 18 months prior to an award, we're in design stage. And so when the oil price is high, there is a reason to move forward with construction development. When the price is low, everything falls back a little quicker. Value of contractor awards by country. This is the slide that I was looking to show you. Here you can see that there was significant reduction in contractor award in 2020 compared to 2019. All except for Qatar. Qatar remained at 16 billion US dollars. The awards in 2019 was $16 billion. The expected awards for 2020 was $16 billion US, and they closed the year at that plan, driven by the economic reasons for building the infrastructure and the program for the FIFA World Cup. Some of the top cities where we saw activity this year, Abu Dhabi still there up in a very high place, Dubai, Riyadh, Qatar, Eastern Province, and Doha. So some of these are the regional areas where we saw the greater value of project activity. The forecast for contractor awards by GCC country for 2021 is an interesting number. You can see here that the expectation for Qatar is extremely high. One of the reasons for that is that this graph includes the building construction activity, it includes the oil and gas activity and infrastructure. And just recently, we've seen a major project activity in Qatar for the oil and gas sector with the announcement of awards as much as $13+ billion US for gas projects there with Qatar Gas and Qatar Petroleum. So this is pushing the activity in Qatar higher. UAE and KSA, we're seeing healthy activities programmed for the year. As we move forward, the developers' commitment to move on these projects is very important. It's one reason why we've brought both Paul and Eva in today to help us understand some of the mindset for the developer as we move forward. So the 2021 forecast by contractor awards by industry. So this will show you the oil and gas significant increase in 2021 planned for the oil and gas, nearly 50% of this being in Qatar. The building sector, we are expecting to see 46 billion and infrastructure 19 billion. Two of these areas are very significant to many of our viewers today. And I'm sure that it's important that we continue to see these types of developments. The building sector by contractor awards. So this is the number specific to the buildings to be awarded, the construction of buildings, not infrastructure, not oil and gas, so that we could get an understanding as to what's moving ahead when it comes to building. Infrastructure projects are a little bit different, and I would expect to see, a strong movement for the infrastructure build during the course of 21. But it's important for us to see that in UAE, there's an expectation for 13 billion, KSA 17 billion, and Kuwait and Qatar following here. So we've seen the budgets that have been announced, and you can read this if you have time. I'm not going to labor here too long, but across the board, governments have reduced their spend and have been prepared to expect expenditure above their expenses and their income, And I'm sure that this is the plan and it's necessary for us to move ahead. While there has been a reduction to some of the usual budgets throughout the region, there is strong commitment from all government bodies to move ahead in support of the economy for the in association to the coronavirus pandemic. Major projects to be expected throughout the region. As you can see here, a quick glance through here, many of the major projects are oil and gas related. And this is going to be a strong driver for us this year. I'm not going to read out all of these names, but we just wanted you to have a look at some of the major project activity that is there. If you're joining us and you would like to know more about these projects, then please look at subscribing to the Ventures Onsite database. It's there that you have available all of this information. Everything that I'm sharing to you today comes directly from the Ventures Onsite database, the intelligence platform that will help you understand your business, your construction business. So in conclusion, the GCC contractor awards are expected to increase nearly 50% in 2021 compared to 2020. So that's healthy. That puts us back to halfway again where we were in 2019. Improving regional relationships is definitely a good sign. High expectations in KSA and Egypt that will take the construction industry forward through the region. Expo 2020 will have a lasting impact for the region. Number of public-private partnerships will rise, and we're seeing that now. High-valued rail projects in Kuwait and Bahrain are expected to move ahead. Some very interesting projects that are on the drawing board in Kuwait with new ports being built and many infrastructure-type projects associated. Supporting local, small, medium enterprises and manufacturers to become a matter of economic urgency. And I'm sure that this is a major concern for the government bodies throughout the region, keeping people employed, keeping businesses alive at this time. Utility projects remain a priority, significant number of solar-powered projects moving ahead, water desalination plants. All of these projects are pushing ahead, and they are contributing in support for this recovery. Even with lower oil prices, the oil and gas sector is still extremely active with projects, as we've discussed, in the FEED stage and EPC bidding stage. There are many more projects to be announced in the coming weeks associated to the oil and gas sector. So that's something that we need to keep very close in hand as we move forward here in our considerations and understanding for the GCC region. So that's our overview of the 2021, the historical report for 2020 and what we expect in 2021. Like I said, it's not a pretty picture, but it's not dire straits at this point in time. And we really need to get to understand what is moving ahead. Taking a close look at the project activity in the region is very important. Being in contact with consultants if you're manufacturing products to supply, that's very important. And so I'd like to open up the panel to Eva and Paul, because in a market downturn, we see it affect the price of construction. And I said this with some of our webinars last year, and people didn't really agree with me, but I'm going to be very straight and say it today. There is dramatic price reduction in the contractor awards. There is an expectation from the developer that they will move ahead if there is a lower price. And there is no denying that. I have friends within the contractor award, the contracting industry, and they're saying that they are tendering projects, but the price is 20 to 30% lower than their expectations. And they're not securing orders because the price is too low. And so I'd like to open up our first point of discussion with regard to this and ask, what are you seeing as a developer, as a designer, as an engineer to these projects? Are you securing new opportunities for design? And is there pressure on you as an architect as well to lower your price in order to secure an assignment? So Eva, why don't you jump in first here? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Hi, I agree with you. In general, we observe quite expectation from the clients to reduce the prices, and I think the pandemic brought that across actually the whole globe, but as well from the society. Everybody seems to be more cost cautious from like saving perspective, and the same with the clients. So they are more cost cautious, the decisions are slightly slower, they are more cautious where they're spending and how they're spending. In a way, from the positive perspective, they also looking how to be more realistic, and they try to look in VE exercises much earlier in a day, which is a positive movement because it's always more difficult to implement when we are far down the line and the project is completely over the budget. So from that perspective, being more cost cautious from the client and planning that ahead of time and understanding the costs from early stages of projects help us to move faster. And of course, from I think looking from Benoit's perspective and now here what I'm seeing, clients expect some reductions. I wouldn't say from our cost perspective would be 20%. I think it's not as bad as for the contractors, but in general, definitely there is an expectations there to kind of look at savings from all the perspectives.
Price reduction is an expectation, and I understand that, but at the same time, we're seeing an increase in raw material supply. And that honestly is making it even more difficult. The expectation for a build to be at a lower cost, and yet just with 3 commodities, let me say, steel up 50%, glass up 10, 15%, aluminium, similar increases. And so these are just some of the products that have seen increase at this time. Paul, what have you seen in the marketplace with regard to raw materials supply?
Yeah, that concurs with our data as well. So we've seen 3 quarters now of double digit growth in commodity prices. Like you said, plastics, copper, they're all up, and that's putting pressure on contractors' margins. Clearly, the pressure on them from clients is to go in competitively, very competitively, in order to secure workload. And really, the only places that they can find those savings are from their own markups and from their own sort of premiums costs and their own sort of traditional sort of main contractor works if they're doing that and not subcontracting everything out. So the tremendous pressure on contractors in order to achieve client expectations in terms of price drops, and frankly, you know, that is causing or may well cause problems down the line where projects are perhaps being bought or tendered below cost, and then that obviously is a recipe for claims and more adversarial relationships later on as contractors try to recover those costs. So part of our advice to clients up front is to make them aware of these potential risks. You know, it's often seen by clients as a great opportunity when the markets are depressed like this, to secure work at a good price. But tender price is very rarely final price on a job, and we just have to make sure that they're fully aware of the risks of the whole sort of procurement cycle, if you like, in terms of the whole cost of the job.
This is a very important point. You know, we've got increased raw material prices, lower contract price for the contractor, and the traditional major strong construction companies are having difficulty to win tender. I'm already starting to see some new names appear. You know, some of the contracting companies that were not as prominent are becoming more prominent because they are the ones that are prepared to be aggressive to secure an order. But if I'm tendering for a construction project, that project's going to take me 2 or 3.5 years to build. And so I'm locking myself into some very difficult pricing strategies for the entirety of that construction. And as a developer, I mean, these are concerns as you've raised. So what is it that you would tell a developer in this particular instance? What would you say to help him or them to understand the consequences of low price?
Well, I think they have to go in sort of fully aware of the risks up front. So I think we need to make sure that the tender documentation is well thought out and properly detailed. So at least contractors have all the information that they need to have at the tender stage. I mean, very often we do see tenders on the initial information or partial information, and that in itself just creates risk. So I think some of the delays we're seeing in the procurement process gives an opportunity to fill some of those gaps in. So at least there's proper detailed tender documentation that's being issued out. I'm hoping that contractors will see the opportunity to hedge. some of their commodity prices, and sort of, especially if they have a portfolio of projects as well. We've seen it in the past where contractors have hedged, especially on steel and reinforcement, and in the expectation that they will win more work on a portfolio of jobs. But certainly, I think clients need to be realistic in terms of their risk profile and the risk that they're passing on to the main contractor in those tender and contract documents. But really, then in terms of the management of that process, then it really is about sort of staying on top of contract administration, ensuring everything is properly and well managed, change is dealt with promptly, and not left to the end, as we see in a lot of projects, and that supply chains are well managed. I mean, we do see a lot of pressure on supply chains and subcontractors, especially with payments. So a piece of advice for our clients is to monitor that payment cascade down from the main contractor to keep the supply chain liquid as far as possible on these jobs, and keep work on site moving forward.
Eva, for UNA, where are your projects located? Are they mostly UAE region, or do you have other projects throughout the GCC region?
Yes, we are involved also in lots of projects in Saudi, hospitality Amala recently. Cannot speak of details of every project, but we are involved in Oman and Bahrain, and it's mostly, and of course Dubai, Abu Dhabi. It's mostly residential segment and hospitality at the moment. It seems to be moving forward. A little bit of commercial offices and retail, big master plans as well. Obviously now with the 2030 vision, you have lots of master plans, especially in Saudi, being developed, that will, the infrastructure started happening, as you rightly said. There's lots of infrastructure being awarded at this moment based on this master planning. And then obviously moving from the master plans, we go into more micro scale, looking at resolving the buildings. So we still 9 years ahead. So now we're zooming into this kind of more infrastructure, architecture, engineering solutions on those plots. So most of the master plans are more getting kind of in shape and fixed. Of course, there's still work out there. Yes, I think there are opportunities from what the market says. As you said, we cannot be completely positive. We have to be aware and prepared. So from the market perspective, 2023 as being set to be properly picked up. But we believe with everything that we have now on the drawing boards, there will be a positive change coming. And more work for all the supply chains. And as Paul mentioned as well, we also see, and we are as a first line to advise the clients the risks with, again, the value engineering happening too late, with contracts being awarded too early. Recently, even we were having this discussion based on schematic design. The client wants to award tender, which is a big risk because obviously for contractor as well, the documentation is not very clear, but also for the client, there will be the variations coming because the contractor might have not priced for something that is shown later on the documentation. So those are the risks of delays and as well additional costs that everybody has to keep in mind. And how is it managed? How is it managed and advised to the client? And of course, from all parties, architects, contractors, and the clients.
You mentioned 9 years away. I mean, we hear a lot about these mega projects in Saudi Arabia. We've actually allocated or dedicated an entire webinar just to talk about mega projects. So we don't want to go too much into that. We might have to bring you guys back again, or at least representatives from your companies, because you are very active in this region. But 9 years away, there's cities that are being built in Saudi Arabia and they don't come up overnight. And so they're at a master plan stage, as you said now, and there is work that's going on, but we don't see anything. There are some, smaller, projects, desalination plants and infrastructure works going on, and some employee housing, things, but we're not seeing the build. And so people are sort of saying, is anything really going ahead? Paul, what are you seeing in that area? Is it moving forward, these major projects in Saudi Arabia? And do you agree that we won't see the significant construction build activity until 22 and 23?
I think for buildings, I think that's probably the right timescale. But there is significant activity on the ground for some of these big cities. It's just a lot of it. The NEOM, for example, is so remote that unless you're there at base camp at NEOM, you're not going to see it. It's too far away. You're not going to drive past it on Checkside Road. So I think there is significant activity going on. Airports are being constructed. Significant infrastructure projects are being commenced and built. I do know on some of the sort of leisure projects that are pushing ahead for some of these developers that they are started to tender buildings as well, or at least sort of the marine works and the infrastructure and those sorts of things that will facilitate those buildings going through. So it is happening. I appreciate, I'm not sure where the participants are sat, but especially sat here in the UAE, it's happening, but it's a good distance away, so you wouldn't necessarily see the activity. But there are literally, between these mega projects with PIF, there are literally thousands of people on the ground, both within those client organizations and consultants that are pushing those projects forward.
Yes, I do know from some of my business activities, Saudi Arabia, there are several projects that are moving ahead, and they're just on the edge of mega employment programs, 30,000 people kind of nature. I mean, there's some high expectations, but the dealings that you have with the developers for that region, and I'd like to also bring in some of the connections that you have in the UAE. It's another concerning region for us. What is the attitude of the developer today, the client, those that have the funds to move ahead with the discussion? Are they moving ahead? Is it business as usual for the developer, or are they at a level of degree of cautiousness? What are you seeing, Eva?
I would say, as I mentioned before, in general, clients are more cautious. We can see much more movement this year, and I would say from the end of last year as well, with more contracts coming towards us, which means, of course, that will be on our drawing board. As Paul mentioned as well, there are stuff we're working on that not necessarily we can even post on LinkedIn. Let's say it's a very good source of information, but there are certain projects that we cannot speak about. That we're developing with the local developers. Lots of RFPs coming out. Obviously, they're kind of checking perhaps as well the market. Yeah, we definitely are quite busy. Not every project's, that's quite probably equally distributed between the consultants. Not every project might come to life. But I believe, especially in Saudi, those mega projects that you mentioned, we have all the PIF identities like Seven, Qadiyah, Diriyah Gate, NEOM, Amala, Red Sea, and many others that are developing. You can see with Qadiyah last year as well, awarded quite a large infrastructure project based on the current master planning. With other things being fixed, as mentioned earlier. And the same here, lots of clients starting from that first drawing board, especially in pandemic, it's quite easy. You can work remotely, you can work from home, you can have meetings, you are not necessarily have to be on site to get things moving. And I think the clients, and you can see the huge resilience from people and the clients coming with new solutions, looking at different aspects. I think environment, it's something that's been on the lots of panels and discussions for many years, but I think now people start focusing much more on that and well-being and And that I think contractors will also have to follow with new BIM requirements, Revit, environmental, and make sure that we all up to speed with the requirement of new technologies and environmental solutions, looking at local materials, for example. We sometimes go far to Italy while we're having some materials that can be sourced locally, which can also reduce the cost and are much more environmentally friendly, for example. So I think those are different areas that most of the clients now are also focusing and started appreciating, as well with the costs increase, as you're saying, globally of different materials.
Anyone that's exporting anything at this point in time will be looking at domestic supply increase. The shipping rates are so high. I have a friend who manufactures nails and he ships to the US. His business activity in the UAE has tripled overnight simply because of freight concerns. And I'm sure that's just one example, but it's the same with all products that are manufactured in the marketplace. And so there is increase. But you did also touch on technology, and we do have a lot of questions from our audience. And if you have some questions, please, guys, just share it. You'll see a Q&A tab there on the Zoom platform. Send us your questions, and this might be your only chance to speak to Ewa and Paul. And if you have anything specific to architectural design, I'm sure that they would love to contribute. But you mentioned about technology, and there are several questions from our audience today about technology, and it is something that we thought we might get the opportunity to touch on. Are the developers looking at new ways to support implementation of construction technology?
Yeah, they are. I think we're seeing a lot on the sustainability side, and as you mentioned, the BIM side. So the main Saudi, the key PIFs sort of developers, if you like, are very heavily pushing the sustainability agenda and a modularization as well agenda. So I think they are looking. They're looking for their projects to be sustainable. They're looking for local construction. They're looking for standardization as much as possible, and offsite fabrication as well. So I think for the Saudi market, they're definitely pushing the boundaries of what's traditionally been done there. And I think that will be a challenge, I think, for the market there to respond to that in a positive way, especially given sort of the volume of work that is coming along. So I think they are challenging the paradigm in that way. And then on the consulting side as well, it's very much more BIM driven, digital collaboration between all the parties on the job. So we're not just talking about designers designing and builders building. We're talking about sort of the BIM model being a sort of a tool that gets used and passed along the chain throughout the project process and project lifetime, all the way through to FM at the end. So I think that these are things that I think the developers are seriously looking at now.
Chuck is one of the guys that is in our audience, and he's asking specific to drones and laser scanning and some of these new technologies that are there to support efficiency and productivity on the building site. I know it's a fact, 80% of construction projects or more, 80% don't finish on time. And if we have a lower market price, and if there is pressure, on the contractor, that 80% will easily increase to 93%. Actually, I know that it's 93%, but I'm trying to be conservative here in the numbers. We'll see most construction projects being delayed. What are you seeing, Ewa? Are you seeing any supportive measures being put in place?
I was actually, funny enough, looking at the same question and answer I wanted to refer to in my previous response as well. I agree with that statement from Chuck. We as architects, we are mostly base our designs on BIM requirements, looking at what the client's requirements are as well, and and the new technologies. The important parameter here is whether the quantity surveyors and contractors also using those technologies. That's a very important question that that the gentleman asked about how the contractors relate to this, and do they have sufficient resources to train their staff to use those new technologies. One aspect is that we're using BIM, we're delivering projects in BIM, and then we have to send drawings and cut PDFs, and those are used on site, which is a little bit of waste of that resource and possibilities to use the tool efficiently. New technologies and how actually you can take information in much better and efficient way for different perspectives. And as Paul mentioned, there are requirements from our clients as well to make sure we draw it, we program it in specific ways to find efficiencies for them. And then if contractor can also take that information that we produce and use it efficiently, that is a huge benefit for construction site, as well as I mentioned earlier, I showed one of the projects from U+A, the laser printed houses, currently mostly based on one-story buildings, but definitely looking into efficiencies and more luxurious product being done this way, not mass production only, but some luxuries elements as well. And modularization, as Paul mentioned, as well reducing the cost price from the client side, architects and contractors as well. So all this delivery, together with the drone scanning, we were using that technology for scanning existing buildings, and coming to another aspect of, first we have new builds, but as well there will be lots of refurbishments in the future, having the region with lots of buildings, especially in Dubai, that started over 20 years ago. Lots of buildings will start being refurbished. So with this drone scanning, new technologies, with surveying, that's much quicker, more efficient and more accurate use of technology.
Paul, are you utilizing this drone technology in some of the major project builds in Saudi at this point?
I'm not sure about the drones. I mean, we have used it. So Al Maktoum Airport, sort of all the enabling works, such that was over such a large area. I know the contractor on that job did do drone photography on that site to monitor progress. And something that we use as well is sort of a 3D imaging system that goes around the project on a tripod, and 3D images are taken at the same point each month or each week or however often, and then you're able to access the building then via a website and see progress and comment on various different images and spin around. So there are elements of that that are being introduced into how we monitor projects, which are more and more important these days with sort of remote working and that flexibility that's required in jobs.
Just another example, Armed Forces Club, big building with lots of little extensions. That building was quite difficult to be measured from being on site, existing structure with a big structure, as well with lots of extensions that happened till date. So we actually use the drone technology, data cloud, so scanning the whole area to create a model in Revit. So apart from taking pictures from drones, those technologies are also available to do the survey. So that's what I meant by having efficiencies with the scanning of the spaces. So by measuring each point, you can actually build 3D model from the cloud data.
Well, we have lots of questions, and we do not want to go over time. We said that we would conclude in an hour, and we're close to it. But there are some other questions with regard to technology. And what I would say, though, is that Ventures Middle East, which is the parent company to Ventures Onsite, is also a partner with the Construction Technology Forum. And there's some very interesting webinars, Construction Technology Festival coming up this year. So keep your eye open to that. And if you have interest in technology, then connect with our dear friends and partners with the Construction Technology Forum or DC Hub. After this webinar, we'll make sure that everyone attending gets links to some of this communication so that you can keep track of what's moving ahead and what's not. Lots of other questions with regard to we see some questions with regard to the Bahrain Rail project. I reported on this last week. Ventures Onsite does a weekly news update, and we bring an overview of the construction activity throughout the region. So if you don't get that, then subscribe to our YouTube channel so you can keep informed with that. There's some really good information, but I know the Bahrain project is moving ahead. They are looking at early stage PPP relationships, and there'll be some future activities there in March. Eva's shaking her head. Do you have any involvement with the Bahrain Metro?
Not Bahrain Metro, but of course, like you said, related to the infrastructure and improvement, there are architectural and satellite buildings coming along that way. So previously I was involved in Bahrain Marina project in my previous firm, and as well currently we also are involved with Eagle Hills and new developments in Bahrain. So definitely there are things happening within the region. As you said, it might be slightly more cautious, more slower, but there are areas of movement there.
There's one question here from the audience with respect to the major project activities, oil industry related. And so I understand that we've presented this during the presentation today. Oil price does dictate government spend. There's an interesting consideration that we talked earlier about project award. And so if a project of $1 billion is awarded to a contractor, it's recognized as an award, but that project will take about 3 or 4 years to build. And so the construction project spend is different. So when the oil price is high, we see an immediate movement forward with interest to develop projects. And so lovely people like Eva and Paul get pulled in to work with the design of a project. And that design might take 12 months. And so the oil price is high. They initiate a project. It takes 12 months to do the design. And then they go to tender and they award the tender. By the stage that the construction project begins, the oil price may have fallen, or the oil price may have increased. And if it increases, the trend continues. If it falls, we start to see the whole cycle again reduce. 2020 was a very prime example to this. We had projects that were on the drawing board to the architect. And so the last time I spoke with Eva, she was very, very busy working from home, but working on projects that were moving ahead. And that was simply because they were already commissioned to do the architectural design. Now, in this 12-month period, I would suggest that many of those projects, Eva, have now been designed and have gone to tender. My question, and my final question to both of you, is those projects that were in design in 2020, are they just sitting like a dead fish on a plate at tender stage, or are the developers, the clients, moving ahead with truly appointing those construction projects?
Exciting questions, because I don't think we know the answers. We also push the clients and ask them for the same thing. Obviously, when we spoke last year, I was with different firm, but definitely there was a bit of a delay sometimes. And as you said, if we get a project awarded now, most probably in 12 months time, depending on the scale of the project and when the clients want to go out for tender. So again, as Paul mentioned, depending on the quality of the package they want, they might go earlier for tender. Obviously, the quality of this package is not as expected by us and by the contractor. So I believe there's lots of those projects already kind of clients planning and release for tender. And I think we have to be positive and look out for that.
Very good. Paul, what are you seeing in your connections?
Well, I think we saw, going back to the early point, I think what we're seeing is that there's less of a demand for the fast tracking. So whereas before we had a lot of, you need to get this out to tender as quickly as possible, we'll go 2-stage or do whatever we need to do to get this out to tender. Then there's a lot less demand for that, and they're more prepared to do a more traditional, fully designed tender approach. We are seeing some pauses at the investment decision gateway, if you like. So they are getting to the point where documentation has been prepared and maybe a PTE has been done, and then there may be a pause generally before the investment decision is taken and is issued to tender. But on the whole, the clients that we're working with, especially in the UAE, the big clients, the Mirals, Aldars, Modons, Emars, generally we're seeing them push on, and we're not seeing too many delays. And I think recently we've seen a pickup in activity, which is encouraging, and we are getting busier. So I do think that it's climbing. Activity is climbing, and there will be more projects coming to market.
I think many of those developers give consideration to the fact that they want to continue with their business as well. And so their business is developing new project activity, and COVID-19 is not going to be with us forever. There will be a period where we will see markets recover and we'll continue to move forward, and they want to be ready. And so I think it's very important that at this particular time, we begin to identify who are those developers that are aggressively or actively moving forward, and make sure that our business is associated with them. And the contractors that are associated with those projects. It's a very important circle. And as business owners, we need to make sure that we are connected to the project activity. And I guess this is a very positive point to conclude our webinar on. Thank you so much, Paul, for bringing up that one point. It is a difficult time for us at this point in time. There is significantly less project activity, but we are seeing a movement forward. There are some very key dates that have been discussed in this meeting. 2020 was a difficult year. In fact, it was equivalent to where we were at the beginning of the worldwide economic crisis, similar numbers. And then we began to see project activity in Saudi Arabia, but we didn't see that project activity for a period of 2 years. But that 2-year period was spent in the designing and the developing of mostly the King Abdullah city, correct? And so there was a strong support to the entire industry throughout the GCC. Many companies in the UAE charged into Saudi Arabia in support for that construction activity, and it helped strengthen the business. And so, yes, we are seeing the mega projects, and yes, we are seeing design. We may not be seeing the construction build to the potential that we'd expect, but it is being designed. And it may not be for another year or two before we start to see that project activity that will bring benefit to our business. We have to survive until that period of time. And guys like you, Paul and Eva, you're involved in the design, and so you're busy. The construction sector, however, and the suppliers to the construction industry will be having some difficult time moving ahead. And so we need to keep our hand on the project support that we can, keep watching the financial structures of our companies to survive and move forward, and be as aggressive to secure the business that will keep the doors open and the people employed. And so there is movement. We're starting to see some movement in the UAE. We're starting to see the consistency of movement in Saudi Arabia. And I'm quite sure in the next couple of months, we'll start to see some additional infrastructure projects released, more developers more comfortable to move forward because it's their business. They have to as well. And so we'll start to see more and more release of project and funds to support the project build. Well, guys, thank you, Eva and Paul. Thank you so much for joining us on our webinar. I think we've touched on some very interesting points. I'm sure everyone in the audience has appreciated what you've shared today. And we do wish you the very best. And thank you so much for being part of our webinar today. Thank you so much. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us. We do want to keep this to a 1 hour. We're a little bit over, but we thank you so much for joining us. We hope that this information has helped you stay informed so you can stay competitive. And that's our commitment this year at Ventures Onsite. We want to do everything that we possibly can to keep you as informed as possible. I believe that the more informed you are about your marketplace, the more success opportunities you have. Following projects, knowing when they start, knowing when they're on hold, knowing who the consultants are, knowing when that project is going to be awarded to a contractor. This is vital information. You don't have the luxury of knowing that information in a month's time because your competitor is there already knocking at the door. You don't have the luxury of thinking that the architect has specified your product because you were specified before. There are competitors knocking at their door. And so be involved, be connected to the marketplace as best you can to drive your business success. It's very important. And I can assure you that the Ventures Onsite Construction Intelligence platform will provide you the technical support, the knowledge, the intelligence necessary for you to stay very connected to the project activity. My name is Phil Higgins, and we do want to thank you so much for being a part of our webinar, and we wish you all the very best. Take care.